The Backrooms. The following documentary contains discussions of psychological distress, dissociation, and deeply unsettling concepts related to perception and reality. Some viewers may find certain ideas and descriptions disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Imagine you take a wrong step. Think about the last time a place made you uneasy for no reason you could name. A corridor in a hotel at 2 in the morning. An empty office floor on a weekend. A shopping center after closing. Nothing dangerous, nothing threatening. Just a space that felt like it was holding its breath. Like the walls were waiting. That feeling, that specific, wordless, crawling feeling, is exactly where this story begins. There are no windows. There are no doors that lead outside. There is no sound except the lights. And somewhere deep in the part of your brain that is older than language, something screams at you that this is wrong, that you should not be here. Whatever you just stepped through, you cannot step back through, that you are somewhere else now, somewhere with no name on any map, somewhere that was never meant to be found. That place has a name now. People on the internet call it the Backrooms. But the strangest part of the Backroom story is not the endless rooms. It is the photograph that started everything, because no one has ever been able to prove where it came from. Most people who have heard of the Backrooms assume it is a creative project, a piece of internet fiction, a collaborative world-building exercise that grew into something bigger than anyone intended. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if the Backrooms were not invented? What if it was discovered? Because the further you investigate the origins of this phenomenon, the harder it becomes to explain away. This is not a video about the lore. This is an investigation, and it begins with a single photograph. In May of 2019, on a website called 4chan, in a thread on the paranormal board, a user posted a photograph. The thread had a simple premise. Users were invited to share images that felt deeply, inexplicably wrong. Not violent, not explicitly horrifying, just wrong in a way that bypassed logic and hit something older and more animal. Images that made the back of your neck tighten without a clear reason why. Dozens of images were shared. Blurry parking garages, oddly proportioned rooms, suburban streets photographed at an angle that made everything look slightly fake, and then someone posted the photograph. There is nothing dramatic about it at first glance. It is a room, possibly multiple rooms. It is difficult to tell where one ends and another begins. The carpet is yellow, heavily worn, the color of old teeth. The wallpaper is a repeating geometric pattern in a brownish yellow that feels like it belongs to a specific decade, the 1980s. Maybe the 1990s, an era of corporate optimism that has long since curdled. The ceiling lights are fluorescent, the long rectangular kind that flicker in hospital waiting rooms and office buildings. They cast a light that is neither warm nor cold, a light that does not comfort, and the space goes back. Room after room, visible through open doorways, each one identical to the last. No furniture, no people, no windows, no indication of what building this is. What floor? What city? What country? Just carpet and wallpaper and lights, in a silence you can almost hear radiating out of the image. Someone in the thread looked at that photograph and wrote a single response. If you are not careful and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you will end up in the Backrooms, where it is nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly generated rooms to be trapped in. One comment, posted anonymously, never expanded upon by its author. And something happened that almost never happens on the internet. People read it and immediately, viscerally agreed. Not in the way you agree with a clever argument, in the way you agree with something you already knew but had never found words for. The comments section filled with people saying, yes, that is exactly what that place is. I have dreamed about this. I know this room, which raises the question this entire investigation keeps circling back to. How did so many people already know a place that supposedly did not exist? But before we get to that, we need to understand the photograph itself, because where it came from is one of the strangest parts of this entire story. Nobody knows who took the image. That is not a dramatic flourish. That is a fact. The photograph that launched one of the most psychologically disturbing internet phenomena of the last decade has no verified origin. The person who posted it to 4chan almost certainly did not take it themselves. The image had been circulating in dark corners of the internet before the 2019 post. Attempts to reverse image search it lead to dead ends. No photographer has ever come forward. No building has ever been identified. There are theories. Some believe it is a photograph of a commercial office building mid-renovation, the kind of anonymous corporate space that existed by the thousands in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Others believe it was taken in a convention center or hotel conference floor. A few people have attempted to match the carpet pattern and wallpaper to specific manufacturers. None of these attempts have produced a confirmed answer. And there is something about a real physical place captured in a real photograph being completely untraceable, that adds a layer of unease that fiction simply cannot manufacture. Because the photograph is real, whatever room that is, someone was standing in it. Someone held a camera, someone pressed the shutter, and then that image drifted through the internet for years until it landed in a paranormal thread and became something no one could have predicted. Now here is where this investigation takes its first genuinely strange turn, because after the 2019 post went viral, something began happening across platforms simultaneously. Reddit, Tumblr, Twitter, Discord servers, YouTube comment sections. People started sharing memories. Not memories of the photograph, memories of the place. They described dreaming about rooms exactly like this. Rooms they had visited in their sleep since childhood. Yellowed corridors stretching beyond what was architecturally possible. Fluorescent light buzzing without a visible source. The absolute certainty felt deep in the body that there was no way out. These accounts came from people in different countries, different age groups, people who had never communicated with each other before, and they were describing the same place. So the question has to be asked, why did so many people already have this dream before the internet gave it a name? To understand why the Backrooms image disturbs people on such a deep, personal level, you need to understand something about how the human brain processes space. Over a lifetime, your brain stores thousands of spatial memories. Office buildings, hotel corridors, waiting rooms, hospital hallways, shopping centers after closing. These spaces share certain qualities. Dropped ceilings, fluorescent lighting, neutral carpeting, repeated geometric patterns, long corridors with no natural light. Your brain does not store each memory as a separate location. Over time, they overlap. They become a composite, a generalized memory of a type of place rather than a specific one. And this composite space looks remarkably like the Backrooms photograph. When you look at that image, your brain does not think, I have never seen this before. It thinks, I have been here. The recognition is real even though the memory is false. This is called déjà vu, the nauseating familiarity of a corridor that should be completely unknown but somehow is not. The Backrooms image triggers this effect more powerfully than almost any other image on the internet. There is a word for spaces like this: liminal, from the Latin word meaning threshold. A liminal space is a transitional environment, a place designed to be passed through, not inhabited. Airport terminals at 4 in the morning, school hallways on a Saturday, hotel corridors at 2 in the morning when every door is closed. Your nervous system understands on a level below conscious thought that you are supposed to be moving through these places. When you are not moving, when you are simply standing in a space designed for transit, something in you registers the wrongness immediately. The Backrooms is a liminal space from which you cannot transit. You arrived, you cannot leave. You are permanently in a place that was only ever designed to be temporary. That is the horror, not the scale, not the darkness in the deeper levels. The carpet, the lights, the walls, the fact that you should be somewhere else by now. But we still have not addressed the most disturbing part, because the Backrooms image did not just trigger familiarity in the people who saw it, it triggered memory, specific, detailed, personal memory of a place they had visited in their sleep. And that raises a question with no comfortable answer. Let us be precise about this. Across dozens of independent accounts posted between 2019 and 2023, across multiple platforms, with no coordination between the people reporting, a consistent pattern emerged. People described dreaming about rooms matching the Backrooms description before they had ever encountered the concept. Yellow corridors, a fluorescent hum, identical rooms extending in all directions, the certainty of being unable to leave. Some describe these dreams beginning in childhood. Some describe them as recurring nightmares. Some describe them as stranger than nightmares. Not frightening exactly, but deeply and persistently wrong, like being stuck in a place where nothing would ever happen, in any direction, forever. There are rational explanations. The composite spatial memory theory accounts for much of it. Many people have spent time in the kinds of institutional, commercial spaces the backrooms resemble. When those memories blend together in dreams, the resulting architecture can look very much like the photograph. The dream is not a vision of a real place. It is a collage of dozens of real places assembled by a sleeping brain. That explanation is credible. It is probably correct for most of these reports. But there is a subset of accounts it does not fully address. People who describe the backroom's dream in such specific detail, not just the visual description, but the feeling, the specific quality of the air, the specific tone of the light, the texture of the carpet underfoot, that the composite memory theory begins to strain. These are not people describing a generic office building. They are describing a specific place with a particular atmosphere they can almost smell. A place that feels real. One account that circulated widely described dreaming about this exact place since the age of 7. Not rooms like this. This room. The person recognized it the moment they saw the photograph. In the dream, they wrote, they were never afraid of the room itself. They were afraid because they knew, with the certainty that exists only in dreams, that the room had been there before anything else. Before houses, before cities, before memory. That it was the template, the space underneath all other spaces. That account has never been verified, but it was shared thousands of times because people read it and thought, yes, that is the feeling exactly. And that collective recognition, that mass-distributed confirmation of a shared experience, is one of the most genuinely strange aspects of this phenomenon, because it suggests that whatever this image triggered in the human brain, it triggered the same thing in the same way in an enormous number of people simultaneously. That does not happen with invented things. That happens with things people already know. Before we continue deeper into this investigation, I want to take a quick moment to thank everyone who supports this channel. I've recently opened a channel membership, which comes with a few extra perks for those who want to help support the horror documentaries we create here. And if you're enjoying this video so far, a quick way to help this small channel is by leaving a comment below. Just comment the word Backrooms. It's simple, and every interaction helps this video reach more viewers who enjoy mysterious and unsettling stories like this. Now, let's go deeper. Once the concept spread in 2019, people began to build. Not physically, architecturally, in language and imagery. They began mapping a place that did not exist, with the obsessive precision usually reserved for real places that need to be understood in order to survive. Wikis, survival guides, floor plans, rules of the environment. They named it Level 0, the yellow carpet, the buzzing lights, the wallpaper. Rooms extending in all directions to a scale the human mind struggles to process. 600 million square miles. For context, the surface area of the Earth is approximately 197 million square miles. Level 0 is 3 times the size of our planet, filled entirely with identical rooms. No sun, no sky, no end. The survival guides note that the carpet is damp in many areas for reasons that cannot be explained, that the lights occasionally flicker, and you should pay attention when they do. Now, the rational reading is clear. People were engaged in collaborative fiction, one of the most successful examples on the internet. But here is what makes it different from every other collaborative project. Nobody was in charge. No author, no creator, no single person directing what the backrooms were. There was a photograph, a comment, and then thousands of people independently began describing the same place with a consistency that should not have been possible without coordination. People on opposite sides of the world described the same carpet texture, the same quality of light, the same rules of survival, the same sense that whatever this place was, it was very, very old. As if they were all remembering something rather than inventing it. And wandering through empty rooms may not be the worst thing you could encounter, because according to the accounts, the backrooms are not empty. The entities, as the community calls them, were described with the same unsettling consistency that characterized everything else about this phenomenon. Independently, across platforms, without coordination, people described the same creatures. The Smilers, named for the only thing visible in the dark. 2 points of reflected light where eyes would be on a face, curved upward. They do not move while you are watching them. They are always at the edge of visibility. The survival guides say the worst thing you can do is let one know that you know it is there. The hounds. Described as resembling large dogs but moving wrong. The anatomy is approximately correct, but the proportions are off, and the movement has a quality multiple independent accounts described using the same word, deliberate, as though every step is calculated, following a logic you cannot access. The skin stealers, the most disturbing and the most consistent. Entities that look like human beings, almost. Close enough that in the dim light of the deeper levels, you might mistake one for another survivor. Close enough to speak to you, close enough to follow you for a long time before you notice something is wrong. Something you cannot immediately name. Some quality of movement or expression that is fractionally, deniably off. The accounts of the skin stealers are written with a specific kind of fear, not the fear of something monstrous, the fear of something almost right. Now, these are descriptions from a community engaged in collaborative fiction. That is the rational context. But the pattern of independent verification strains against it. People who had never read any Backrooms content, encountering the concept for the first time, and asked to describe what might live in a place like this, described creatures matching these accounts with unnerving accuracy, as if some part of the human mind already knows what belongs there. That question might have stayed in niche corners of the internet if a 16-year-old with a camera had not made something that changed everything. In January of 2022, a video appeared on YouTube, titled Backrooms, Found Footage, posted by an account called Kane Pixels. The creator was a teenager named Kane Parsons. The video ran approximately 9 minutes, filmed in the style known as analog horror, presented as though it were degraded and found rather than produced. The visual quality suggests the 1990s. The footage has the texture of something that was not supposed to be recovered. What it depicts is a person filming in what appears to be a construction site who backs through a wall and finds themselves somewhere else. Yellow carpet, fluorescent hum, rooms that go back too far, and then, in the distance, something that might be moving. It received 4 million views in its first month. The comment section is not what you would expect beneath a horror video. No jokes, no arguments. Just people saying quietly and earnestly that the video disturbed them more than any horror film they had ever seen. People saying they recognized the place. People describing a specific quality of dread they could not name. Kane Parsons had not created a monster. He had created a mirror. He took the feeling millions of people had already been carrying and gave it motion, sound, and duration. He put you in the room. By 2023, the Backrooms had generated hundreds of millions of views, a planned Hollywood adaptation, merchandise, video games, and an entire cultural ecosystem built around a single old photograph of an empty room. But beneath all of that, the original question remained. Why does this feel like a memory rather than fiction? There are things every human being fears that have nothing to do with monsters. Being lost, genuinely, irreversibly lost, in a place with no landmarks and no way to call for help. Being alone in a space designed for others, where the absence of people is not peaceful but wrong. Architecturally, fundamentally wrong. Being in a place familiar enough to recognize but unfamiliar enough to disorient, the worst possible combination, the one that removes both the safety of the known and the navigability of the genuinely unknown. The Backrooms address all three simultaneously. It takes environments that are familiar, the office building, the shopping mall, the hotel corridor, and removes a single thing that made them safe: people, purpose, the knowledge that outside these walls, the world is waiting for you. The Backrooms take everyday architecture and removes the outside. There is no outside. There is only more hallway. The Backrooms is not a fantasy. It is not a place that requires imagination to find frightening. It is the architecture of your actual life, reflected back at you without the parts that made it livable. Your office building with no exit. Your hotel corridor at 3 in the morning, but the morning never comes. Your childhood school hallway, but you are the only person in it and you have been walking for hours. That is the Backrooms, and it is already everywhere you look. Let us return to the photograph one more time. Yellow carpet worn at the center where feet have walked. Wallpaper in that specific brownish yellow, the pattern repeating slightly out of alignment, the way it does when installed by someone in a hurry. Fluorescent lights above, the long rectangular tubes, one of them slightly brighter than the others. Rooms opening into rooms, each one identical, each one empty. The doorways lined up in a perspective that should end somewhere but does not. This photograph exists. It was taken in a real place, by a real person, at a real moment in time. Someone walked on that carpet. Someone stood beneath those lights. Someone pressed the shutter, and they left behind this image. An image that, when posted to the internet, was immediately and independently recognized by thousands of people who had never been to that building, never walked those corridors, never seen that carpet or those lights. Recognized, not merely found interesting, not just labeled creepy, recognized. As in, I have been here. As in, I know this place. As in, something in me knew this was coming before I ever saw the image. The Backrooms spread with the speed and completeness of something being confirmed rather than introduced. People did not learn about the Backrooms and find it interesting. People encountered the Backrooms and found it familiar. And that distinction, that gap between invention and discovery, is the thing that no amount of lore, no wiki page, no horror video has ever adequately explained. Because if the Backrooms are just a story, why does it feel like a memory? If it was invented, why does it feel like something we already know? Maybe the answer is psychological. Maybe it is the composite memory effect, the déjà vu, the brain blending 1,000 mundane office buildings into a single impossible space. Maybe, or maybe the person who posted that photograph in 2019 was not introducing a fictional concept. Maybe they were showing people something that was already there, something that had always been there. Underneath the buildings we walk through, underneath the corridors we transit, underneath the familiar fluorescent lit spaces of ordinary daily life. A place where the lights stay on, but no one is home. A place where the carpet is damp and the wallpaper repeats and the rooms go back as far as you are willing to walk without ever arriving anywhere. A place you have visited in your dreams since before you can remember. And the next time you turn a corner in an empty office building, or step out of a hotel elevator into a corridor at 2 in the morning, or walk the length of a school hallway when everyone else has gone home, pay attention to that feeling. The one that starts at the back of your skull and moves down your spine. The one that says, this is familiar. The one that says, I have been here before. The one that says, be careful. Because if reality does have seams, if the world we walk through is not as solid as it appears, then the Backrooms would not look like another dimension. It would look exactly like the places you pass through every single day. Places where the lights are still on, but no one is there. And if reality ever does glitch right now, you might already be closer than you think. If this investigation left you with more questions than answers, that was the point. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think the Backrooms really are. Invented fiction, shared dreams, or something older that people were never meant to find. If you made it this far, like this video and subscribe to The Silent Scream. And if this is the kind of mystery you want more of, let me know in the comments. There are more stories like this, and we are just getting started.